Hello and welcome to the MBOM podcast, where you'll learn to master the business of yoga. MBOM is a proud part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith. I'm a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, a yoga business coach, and a total business geek. Here at MBOM, you'll learn everything you need to know to create a sustainable yoga business by learning from myself and guests from around the world about how they built their yoga businesses, and about how you too can become a successful yoga teacher, studio owner, and much more. All right, let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Mastering the Business of Yoga. I'm Amanda, and I'll be your host for today and all episodes of the show. And I'm really excited that you're joining us and tuning in for the second episode of our 5-episode send-off series. Last week on the podcast, we talked about all the things that you need to get started with your yoga business after you've got your yoga teacher training. So we talked about a ton of different things. Hopefully it wasn't too much and too overwhelming, but you can work and go at your own pace, of course. And today we're going to expand and grow on that. So this episode is really about taking your business to the next level. So it's the question of how do I expand my offerings? And so we're going to dive into that. We're going to talk about numerous different ways that you can expand your offerings. And this usually comes into play and happens once you've been teaching for a little while, once you have that feeling like you want to take your business to the next level, or you feel like creating your own business, once you want to offer more to your students and really dive into making a more sustainable income. And like we've talked about before, group classes are really a great way to get teaching practice, discover what you like to teach, find students, and get in front of more people, but they aren't the most financially lucrative. So last week on the podcast, we talked about what to expect once you get a teaching opportunity at a studio, and I shared that normally group classes will pay around $35 to $50 per class. And that can really go lower and it can also go higher. But I would say that's kind of the average that I tend to see and that I've also been offered myself. So let's just do the math for a second on $50 a class. So if we're getting $50 a class and we're teaching 10 classes a week, that's $500 a week that we're bringing in of revenue, which is about $2,000 a month. If we were to do 20 classes a week, then we are making about $1,000 a week, which is about $4,000 a month. So $2,000 a month is about $24,000 a year, and $4,000 a month is about $48,000 a year. So you can see that to make a modest salary of a little under $50,000 a year, we need to be teaching 20 classes a week. And it's not just teaching 1-hour classes, because that's the time that we're teaching, but we need to show up early for class in order to open the studio space, get ourselves mentally and physically prepared. We're going to spend a little bit of time after allowing the students to ask questions, allowing them to make their way out at their own pace, closing up the studio. So let's say our entire teaching experience is about 2 hours. If you have a short commute, then you don't have to add a lot on top of that. But if you're commuting 20 to 30 minutes or more, then you're adding another whole hour to that. So it's about 3 hours for this $50. And then if you're considering that it's going to take 3 hours, how many classes can you actually teach a day? Because to do 20 classes a week is 4 classes 5 times a week, or teaching 6 or 7 days a week, which I would never recommend working every single day of the week. I think it's really important that we have some time off. So as you start doing this math, you can really see that making a sustainable full-time income only off teaching group classes is going to be super difficult in our business. And I love group classes. Like I said before, they're a great way to get started. They're a great way to discover who you are as a teacher, to get in front of more people, and to get teaching experience. But I think at some point, and especially if you want to do this full time, we're going to have this urge and desire to do more. So if you want to run a full-time yoga business, you really need to think about having other offerings that will supplement your income and help you grow your business. And that's what this episode is all about. So the various things that we're going to talk about today and that we're going to dive a little bit deeper into are workshops, privates, corporate yoga, retreats, specialty programs, online offerings, and creating a signature offering. We're going to talk about how to actually do that all in your business, and then a few pointers and stuff to actually get going. And for the sake of time and energy, it's going to be pretty high level with each of these. We're going to go into what they are, what you could charge, what they're all about in your business, but we're not going to dive deep. And here's what's great about the podcast in general is that there are over 300 episodes that I've recorded, and I've done tons of episodes diving deep into each of these aspects. So I'll give you a link to a website at the end that will point you in the direction of where you need to go if you want to dive deeper into each of these topics. And that way, as you're listening or even as you're growing your business, you can be like, oh, I'm ready for privates. Okay, I'm ready for retreats now. And then you can dive deep and learn. So I'm going to give you the high level overview of how to begin expanding your business, and then I'll point you in the direction of how to dive deeper and expand even further and really get into the nitty gritty of each of these offerings. So let's get started. We're going to kick things off with workshops. So you have probably done a workshop at some point in your life as a yogi practitioner. And workshops are generally about 2 to 4 hours long. They generally focus on a specific topic, and they really allow you to dive deeper into a topic than a group class does. And while we can certainly theme group classes, and we can do peak poses, and we can have specific focuses for poses, people come to group classes because they want to have an entire class, right? They want to do a variety of different poses. And the cool thing about workshops is that you can take something very specific like back bends or arm balances or handstands or headstands, and you can really dive deeper into those. And you can do all sorts of things when it comes to workshops. You could do workshops on the chakras. You could do workshops on yoga nidra. You could do workshops on astrology or the phases of the moon or targeting a specific part of the body. You could do workshops on yoga philosophy. Seriously, the list is endless when it comes to things you could do. And so when you're thinking about what you want to do, this should really be a topic that you're both passionate and knowledgeable about, something that you feel excited to teach and that you could teach for a couple of hours. And so the pricing for workshops is going to vary depending on the length and the content and what you're providing people. If you're providing them with supplies or tea or food or anything like that. But on average, I would say workshops usually cost around $35 to $50. So let's do a quick calculation again on this. So if our workshop costs $50 and we're running it for 2 hours and we have space for 10 people, let's say, we're going to have $50 per person times 10 people is $500 in revenue. Now, of course, we need to have a place to do our workshop. So often we'll do this at a studio that we teach in or a space that we can rent. So there is going to be some overhead with this. We are going to have to pay something. And then, of course, there's going to be marketing and promotion that will have a small cost. But you can just see the difference for 2 hours of teaching. $500. If you could get 10 people in there, that's a huge difference from 2 hours of teaching for, $100. And of course, you could always price your workshop higher. And of course, we can always make space for more people if the space and the content allows for it. So this is just an example, but you can just kind of see how creating this content and being able to offer these workshops, once a quarter or every couple of months or once or twice a year really allows you to dive deeper into something, serve your students in a deeper way, and then also make a more consistent income. So workshops are really great as you're kind of getting into and dabbling with expanding your business and expanding your offerings. I think they're a really great place to start. So the next thing that we're going to dive into is privates. So privates can be working one-on-one with somebody or working with a couple or a family or a small group of people. Sometimes they can be specialized private events for things like weddings or bachelorette parties, and they're usually 60 to 90 minutes. You can talk with your students and kind of decide what that looks like. The great thing about privates is that they're more tailored and hands-on. So you get to actually sit down with your students. You get to talk about their goals, what they want to work with, what they want to work on, what they want to learn. If there's something specific they're wanting to do, get out of the class, and then you can serve them in that way. And so privates can either be offered at the person's house or they could be offered online. Or of course, you could again rent a studio space. Of course, if you're renting any type of space, you just have to keep in mind the budget and the fact that you will have to pay some overhead for that. But in general, it's great if you can go to your client's house, or maybe you have a space in your house where they can come, or you can do it online. We're going to dive into online teaching in our next episode of the Send Off series, so we won't get into that too much here, but just know that that is an option. And in terms of pricing, you can charge quite a bit more for privates than you do for group classes. So I would say like the lowest end that you would go for a private would be like $50. And then on average, it could go up to like $150. If you do have a yoga therapy training or some sort of a specialized background and you're offering something that really focuses in on supporting your students, then perhaps it could be more. But for the average yoga teacher, I would say somewhere between $50 and $150. So again, you just look at the difference in the amount that you're making revenue-wise. If you have a couple of private clients that want to meet once a week or once every couple of weeks, this can just be really supportive for you in your business. And I also think that this is something that can really help us expand our teaching skills. And I actually taught privates when I was a pretty new teacher, and I for sure had some imposter syndrome. I sort of thought to myself, like, I don't have enough experience to do this. I have no idea how I can be of service to these people. And the thing was asking questions, asking the clients what they wanted to do when they worked with me, what they wanted to get out of the classes, and just curating and creating classes for them around that. And one of the biggest things I found is that, I had these clients, it was a couple, and they were really happy to pay me to sit in traffic to and from their house if they could just do yoga out of their home. They were interested in yoga. They were interested in working on strength and flexibility. They were interested in sort of generic all levels classes, but they just didn't want to have to leave their house to do that. And I was totally happy to, go and offer them classes at their house, and they were happy to pay for that. So that's often the case for people. They just don't have time or capacity or the desire to go to a yoga studio, and they're happy to bring a teacher into their house. So this is a great opportunity to expand your business, to expand your teaching, and also to teach outside the hours that studios often offer. So one thing I found as a yoga teacher is that studios have very similar schedules. There's often a very early morning class, and then there's a class usually around the 9:30 range, usually a lunchtime class, and then something in the early evening, like a 5:30 class, and then something like a 7:30 class. Sometimes there's like a later class with studios. But in general, that's kind of the schedule. And that really leaves a lot of hours in the day to kind of fill up with private clients and be able to work with private clients either earlier in the morning, or say they're moms or people with more flexible schedules working from home. They could do all sorts of hours during the day possibly. So lots of ability to kind of fill your schedule with privates and make more of a sustainable income doing so. All right, next up on our list is corporate yoga. So corporate yoga is taking yoga into the workplace and offering yoga in workspaces and office spaces. So this is really interesting because it gives you the opportunity to work with individuals who spend most of their days and time sitting. And these are often people who don't identify as yogis. I'm certainly not saying that everyone who works in corporate doesn't feel like they're a yogi or doesn't want to go to a yoga studio. I was a big self-identifying yogi when I worked in corporate, and I certainly was going to yoga studios. But for a lot of people, it doesn't resonate with them, or they just don't feel like it's their space. But that doesn't mean that they don't need the practice, right? So it's really great to be able to go into people's workspaces and offer yoga. And this happens in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes it's small teams that you're working with directly and they have a specific spot set up. Sometimes for bigger companies, they have a gym in their office building and you'll teach outside of the work hours or on a lunch hour or something like that. So corporate classes can look very different just depending on the company, but it's normally a small group class that's offered in the mornings, lunch hours, or after work. And the pay is usually quite good for corporate yoga. Prices will really depend on the business. Smaller businesses often have a smaller budget. Bigger businesses often have a bigger budget. But if you can get in and offer offer a series of classes or, a semester of group classes or something like that, this can be a really great way to expand your teaching and expand your business and just teach other clients and other people. And often these people who work in corporate spaces are the types of people who are really interested and keen to do private classes. This is a great way to move into teaching privates, is by teaching corporate and vice versa. So next up is retreats, and this is one of the ways to expand your business that often gets the most excitement and people are often the most interested in. And I don't know if this is because it seems very glamorous or if it's just because people like the idea of traveling or it's just the thing that they kind of see online the most. But retreats are a fantastic way to expand your business. And these can be from like 1 day up to 1 week. You can offer local retreats, weekend getaways, or international retreats. I think when I first started thinking about retreats, I really thought of these international retreats, like going to Costa Rica for a week or going to a beach in Mexico for a week. And there are lots of varieties of retreats, like half day, 1 day, weekend retreats, just, in your backyard, wherever you live, heading into the mountains or to a lake or by a coast. So you could still offer retreats even if you're not interested in traveling internationally, which is really cool. And I would actually really recommend start by testing the waters with something small and close to home. So if you think that you're interested in retreats, start with a 1 day retreat. Some are very local. Or start with a weekend retreat that's, 30 minutes to an hour from where you live. I think it's really important that we start small and then work our way up to these bigger international retreats because there's a lot of logistics that go into retreats. And one of the things that I learned through doing interviews about retreats is that being on a yoga retreat and hosting a yoga retreat are two very different experiences. And I think we know this as yoga teachers, right? Because practicing and taking a yoga class is very different from teaching and offering a yoga class. And so retreats is going to be the same way. And prices are going to really vary depending on how long your retreat is, where you're going, what you're offering, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the biggest thing that I want to mention here is that you have to make sure that you price into your retreats your payment. So the only way that this is really sustainable in your business for you to do long term is to make sure that you've got a per head price that you're paying yourself. So people are paying your time and your energy for you being on that retreat, you being the host of the retreat, and that type of thing. So that's something that's really important just to make sure that you do have that. So you want to build in a profit margin or build in an amount that you're taking per person. This is super, super important. Otherwise, you're basically going to be paying to go on a trip that you're hosting, which is great experience, but that's not how we build sustainable business, right? So super important to consider. So next up is specialty or registered programs. So this can be any special registered program that's on a topic that you're passionate about and that will attract your ideal student, can be within your niche. This can be things like intro to yoga or yoga for beginners. This could be yoga for seniors, prenatal or mom and baby yoga, or intro to meditation, just as a few examples. And the idea with a specialty or registered program is that you offer it at the same time each week. People register for the entire thing. And I've actually been seeing more and more teachers doing this with group classes or online classes. And this is a model that I really love for independent yoga teachers. So one yoga teacher that I know specifically, Nick Danu, who has been on the podcast a number of different times, she's been running some online yin classes in this way. So basically you pay for a semester of yoga. And the way that it works is that there's one class per week and she records the class and sends out the recording. So you sign up for the entire semester, whatever that is, say it's September through November. And if you miss a class, then you have the recording accessible. Plus, if you want to be practicing more than once a week, then you are also able to do the recording from that week as many times as you would like. And what I love about this model is that you have a registered group of people, so you know who's coming to class, or in theory, who should be coming to class. You can cap your classes, and you also know how much income you're making because people are paying right up front for these packages. And so I think that this is a really great way that we as individual yoga teachers can even start running our group classes as kind of this registered program model or the specialty program model. But certainly, if you are going to do a special type of program like yoga for beginners, you can set up like a 6-week or a 12-week program, and people who sign up do the entire program with you. And when it comes to pricing, you can price these similar to drop-in classes. So if you have your own model that you're setting up, you can decide what your drop-in or group class rate would be. Or if you work with a studio and you're going to be offering this through a studio, then you can pair it pretty similar to whatever price they charge for that. And basically, you can add up how many classes there would be. So say it's going to be $20 a session and you're doing 6 sessions, then it's $120. And a great marketing tip or tactic for this could be doing an early bird sign up. So if people sign up before X date, they get for $100 or something like that. So what I love about this is that you have the ability to serve your people in a more longer term fashion. You have the ability to really learn and grow with your students because it's the same group of students over the course of time. And then also you can start doing the math on this. So say you're going to run a 6-week series for $120 and you're going to get 10 people in, that's $1,200 in income. And to make $1,200 in income with group classes, it's just going to be a little bit harder, maybe more inconsistent in many instances. So this can be a really great way to grow with your students and to serve your students. Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about is online offerings. And what I want to offer here with online offerings is a reminder that basically anything we've talked about can be offered online. You can do workshops online, you can do privates online, you could do corporate yoga online, you could do retreats online. I would say probably not more than half or 1-day retreats or kind of a couple hours per day over a couple of days, but you can do them online. And of course, you can run these specialty registered programs online. We are going to do a whole episode, as I've mentioned, focused on online offerings, the tech side, and all that type of thing. We're going to talk about group classes, videos, courses, memberships, privates, and so much more. So the last thing I want to talk about here is creating a signature offering. And a signature offering can be really any version of this. It could be a workshop, it could be a style of private, or something you offer corporate retreats, programs, an online offering. But basically, it's something that's very unique to you. Now, could you do something like full moon circles or 108 ohms or celebrating a solstice or an equinox, even though other people are doing it? Yes, of course. The thing is that you are creating something that is new to you and something that you've put your unique twist on. And basically, this is something that you can become known for, that you can offer over and over again. So something like a full moon ceremony or an equinox or solstice celebration is something that you could repeat every time that that happens. Or something that you do with like the rhythms of the seasons could be something you repeat. Or even if your signature offering is something having to do with lower back pain or hips, maybe it's something you offer once a quarter. It's a specialty workshop or a specialty program that happens every couple of months. So this is something that I really want you guys to start thinking about with your offerings is what exactly you're interested in. So what do I kind of have this interest and this passion towards offering? What are some topics I'm interested in teaching? And how could I put this on rinse and repeat? What are some offerings that I could become known for, that I could repeat a couple of times a year? And I think that this is something that can be really beneficial in our business because we're able to bring new people in. We're able to have these offerings that we offer people time and time again, that they become to know and love. And again, it can become very financially sustainable for us. So as we start to build out these various offerings in our business, we start to see more revenue come in and specifically more consistent revenue. So beginning to think about what you could really offer to serve your audience that you're passionate about, what could become the thing that you're known for or your signature offering can be a great way to sort of get started with this. So the next thing I want to do is talk about how to actually do all of this in your business, like the tech side of creating all of this. And in order to talk about that, of course, we're going to talk about OfferingTree. When I first started my business, there was no one-stop shop platform available. I had my website through one platform, my email software through another, my classes, privates, workshops, etc. through another platform, and my recordings through another. That is a lot of platforms, monthly payments, passwords to remember, and integration between platforms to figure out. It honestly gives me a headache just thinking about it. Now with OfferingTree, you can have everything in one place. When you build your website, you also have the option to have your classes, workshops, private, specialty programs, retreats, memberships, and all your online offerings, including video libraries, in one place, and all for one monthly membership fee. OfferingTree is also priced for yoga teachers, which is something that I love, and you won't break the bank with this one-stop shop software. Plus, you can get 50% off your first 3 months of a monthly subscription or 15% off your first year if you opt for an annual membership when you sign up with my link. It's offeringtree.com/MBO. Once again, if you want to get started with OfferingTree and get started with expanding your business, you can head on over to offeringtree.com/MBO and save a little bit of money. So you guys are in a lot better position than I was when I first started my business, and you can really just get started with expanding your offerings right away. The tech side doesn't have to be hard, as I just told you, and it also doesn't have to be expensive, which is great. And one other thing that I will mention that I love about OfferingTree is that they have amazing customer service, so they can help you if you're struggling with any of this, because I think sometimes we can be like, oh, well, that's great that you've provided me with an affordable platform that can do everything, but I'm still not super techie. Don't worry, they can help you with that. They have great customer service, like I mentioned. And then there's also an awesome Facebook group that you can go ask questions in, which is super, super handy. I've done that a bunch with my courses and my stuff that I've got over on OfferingTree. So that covers the tech side of expanding your business, which is great. It's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward, which is huge and amazing and makes things so much easier for us as yoga teachers. And there's just a few other things that I want to cover when it comes to expanding your business and your offerings. And these are just a couple of words of wisdom and just a few things that I think are important as we go into this aspect of our business. And so the first is that I think it's really important to be flexible and willing to adjust. And I think we saw this very blatantly when the pandemic happened, just how much we were demanded to be flexible and how much we did have to adjust. And obviously, we're hoping that there's no big life events like that happen again. But I think that there can be little things that happen either with the economy or just changes in technology and demands or personal changes that come up with us, either things within our family or maybe things that happen with your body or your health. And I think it's always important to be prepared, to be flexible and be willing to adjust in your business. We have to be adaptable. We have to adapt to the times and the demands and the needs of our students. So that's a super important aspect of, I think, expanding our business and doing so successfully. As well, it's really important to determine your niche and find your ideal student that fits in that niche and then teach to them. And just to expand on that ever so briefly, because we do have lots of other content on this, a niche is going to be a specialization. So while it is great to teach all levels Vinyasa flow classes or level 1, level 2 classes, as you start expanding your business, I think it's really important to start figuring out what is something that makes you unique and what is something that you do differently with your teaching, and how can you really create programs and offerings for those people. So I think sometimes when we're newer to this, we get a little hung up on, I don't know what workshops to offer, or I don't know what to teach people in privates, or I don't know how to pitch myself with these programs or these retreats, or what types of online offerings to make, because we haven't quite figured out what our specialization is, what makes us unique, and who we're really teaching to that fits into that niche. So this is work that I think we can be intentional about, but that also we kind of have to trust that happens with time. And it happens from saying yes to opportunities, teaching lots of classes, figuring out what your yeses are, what you really are excited about. But your niche and your specialization will come naturally and with a little bit of intentional thought and practice. But this is really going to be what you do unique, what you specialize in, and then the students that are very much interested in that. And then that's where you can start teaching these other programs and stuff like that. So really important to just have this on your radar and to start working on niching down a little bit and finding the students that are interested in that niche. And then another thing that I think that is really important is to create a business that has a variety of offerings, both online and offline. So in-person offerings and online offerings. Again, one of the big changes that happened with the pandemic was that online yoga became something very popular, and it's become very normal now at this point. And I think that this is a silver lining of the pandemic. This is something that's been really great for us in the yoga industry. And I think it's really great if you can have a variety of both offerings. I think that they both offer something super, super unique for us as yoga teachers. And it's great to take advantage of that if you can. I very much understand and recognize that teaching online is not the same as the vibes in person. You don't get the same energy, you don't get the same in-person connection, but at the same time, there are lots of benefits to teaching online and lots of opportunities to expand our businesses. And we are going to do a whole episode on this, so I will keep it there. I'll keep it short and sweet for right now, but just something to start considering as you're stepping into this. Hey, I want to do this full time. I want to have other offerings to supplement my income. What are some things that I can create? I think that to do this successfully, just thinking about the variety of online and offline can be huge. And then something else I recommend is to consistently look at what's working and what isn't working, and then make changes as necessary. I think that having at least one time a year where you're reflecting on things and how your business is going and what you like and what you don't like and what you want to change is super, super key. So for a lot of this, the natural pause or the natural way of doing this is at the end of the year. So at the end of the year, we'll do a reflection of the year that passed, and then we'll make intentions or goals or resolutions for the following year. And often we do that personally, but I think we can also do this professionally. Now, I really like to do this on a professional level a couple times a year. The ideal, I think, for me is once a quarter, so every 3 months, but at least try to do the halfway mark of the year plus the end of the year. I think that this is something that can just really benefit us. We can sit down and look like, hey, this class is serving me because I love it. This class is serving me because it pays quite well. This one is not paying very well, and I also don't love it. Is there a way that I can shift this and make this something that I like, or is it time to drop this? What are my goals for next year financially, professionally, personally? What do I really want to be working on? What do I want to launch into the world? Are there any other trainings I want to do? It's always good to just sit down and reflect on all of this. And so making that intentional time to actually do that is important. And then the last thing I want to say with this section is to be confident in your offerings and charge for your services. Some free is fine, but everything shouldn't be free. And this is something that we talked about last week as well. So we'll continue to talk about this in upcoming episodes, where money mindset and just shifting our mindset to how we can be of service and have these exchanges. But I think that building our confidence as teachers is huge. And I think that there's a lot of ways that you can give back to your community, that you can do by donation or sliding scale, et cetera, et cetera. But I think at the end of the day, to build a successful and sustainable business, we really do have to know our worth and be confident in that. And that does not come from charging things for free. So those are the couple of the tips that I will leave you with. And now I just want to give you some additional resources to kind of support you on this journey of expanding your business. And I do have a link for you, just as I did last week. So it is mbumyoga.com/experienced-yoga-teachers/. Of course, that will be in the show notes. And if you just go to the MBUM website and you go under the resources tab, you'll see the tab that says Experienced Yoga Teachers, and you can click on that. And then it's got resources for you. So there's a couple of freebies that you can download here that will be super helpful for you to just expand your business. And this one actually has a number of different resources that can help you. And then a couple of other things that I'll mention. So I do have a course called Yoga Business Bootcamp, and it's a step-by-step framework to accelerate your yoga business, fill your classes, and make a sustainable income doing what you love. This is really designed for yoga teachers who are ready to take their businesses to the next level, and it is super, super affordable. So you can go check that out. You'll be able to find that right from that Experienced Yoga Teachers page, or you can head on over to my Offering Tree website website to find my courses. So it's amandakingsmith.offeringtree.com. And then you can just sign up for Yoga Business Bootcamp. It is 97 Canadian dollars. So it's super, super affordable, and it is jam-packed with so much of the stuff that we have talked about here. It will really help you expand your business and just take your business to the next level. So those are a couple of resources that I've got for you. And then if you continue to scroll down this page, once again, you'll find the Advanced Yoga Teachers episodes. And so this is something that can kind of help you just figure out what is next for you in your business. So we have a ton of different episodes under this category. So you're welcome to scroll through those, or if there's any particular topics from this episode that you want to dive into further, like for example, you want to learn more about workshops, one thing that you can do is go onto the MBOM website, so mbomyoga.com, and then in the top right corner, there's a little magnifying glass. So that's a search bar, and then you could just search the topic that you're looking for. But I want to just break down and give you guys a couple of pointers in the directions of where you could go to look for this type of stuff. So if you're interested in workshops, we have an awesome episode with Mado Hesselink where she talks all about creating workshops that wow. So you could search for that one. And then we have another great one with Nancy Gerstein on planning and promoting a workshop, and she really breaks that down, which is awesome. If you are interested in corporate yoga, I would definitely recommend Office Yoga. We've done a couple episodes with Miriam, and she has a lot of great advice to give. I also have a great episode on private yoga with Emily Sussel. So you could check that out. And then for running retreats, we've got some great episodes with Jen Corley from We Travel, as well as Paloma Newman, as well as also some great episodes with Julie Zuzak. And so these episodes will really help you go in the direction of where you want to go with your business. And of course, there's a lot of other topics and episodes that you can dive into. And then one other resource that I will mention is my book. My book was created to help you expand your business and create a successful business. So it's got a lot of different sections in it. So it starts with, actually getting started with teaching studio classes, owning a yoga studio, which we'll talk about in another podcast episode. And then it gets into things like traveling and teaching yoga, running yoga retreats, corporate yoga, private yoga, workshops, memberships, how to find your niche, taking your business online, marketing, branding, money mindset, and more. So it's basically everything that we've talked about plus some. So that is called How to Master the Business of Yoga. There is a link on my website if you are interested in checking that out. It's just on my main menu. It says book, or you can just go to mbomyoga.com/book, and that'll take you directly to the Amazon link to purchase. So lots of different resources. There's some free, there's lots of free, in fact. And then there are some that are paid resources like my book, my course. But honestly, those are pretty affordable resources too. You're not going to break the bank with either of those things, my courses, or my book. So definitely would recommend just taking some time to sit down, think about what you're excited about, where you want to take your business next, what kind of interests you most, what topics you're interested in, what types of offerings you're interested in, and then just start diving in a little deeper and start learning before you create anything. And of course, I'm always here to support if you need anything. If you have any questions, I've got you. Send me an email, info@mbomyoga.com. So I am going to stop this episode here. I think we've covered a lot of great stuff when it comes to taking your business to the next level and expanding your offerings. So I hope that you are leaving here feeling inspired as well as supported and just ready for next steps. Like I mentioned before, next week we're going to dive into teaching online, and I am so excited for that episode. So we will see you next week to talk about and learn about teaching online. And for now, I would like to give a big thank you to Offering Tree for partnering with me for this episode. Thank you so much to those of you who are listening, sharing the episodes, supporting the podcast. I am so, so grateful. All right. Thanks so much. And I'll see you next week. Bye for now. Thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of the podcast. To find links, notes, resources, and everything mentioned in today and all episodes of the show, you can head on over to mbomeyoga.com. You can find the podcast and myself on Facebook and social media at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And I would love for you to join the private Facebook community, Yoga Business Badasses. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please make sure you reach out to me at info@mbomeyoga.com. And last of all, if you enjoyed this episode of the show, please make sure you hit subscribe and leave a review for the podcast. It would mean the world. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.